Want to scream like Alex Terrible? Well, I'm going to show you these same brutal low techniques that he's using. And trust me, I'm not going to just tell you to do the deep sigh or a dog bark. As a bonus, I'll also show you how to do his rolling R screams. My name's David. I'm a full-time screaming coach since 2019, and I've helped over 2,000 people learn to safely unlock their screams. And in this video, I'll go over how to find the bass distortion, then how to shape it so it sounds like an inhuman roar. So in order to start to build this scream, we first want to start off by developing something called a false chord scream, but not in the way that most people talk about. You see, back when I was trying to learn, I was told by pretty much everyone that I needed to do a deep sigh to start it off. But the problem is that it would sound breathy, airy, and I've run out of air, it would tickle, and it would only sound kind of cool at best. Hey, B, C, 1, 2, 3. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And I actually went to multiple screaming coaches to try and unlock it, but I stayed stuck at this stage for 4 to 5 years before really figuring it out. And I would have saved so much time if someone had told me what I'm about to share with you. So here's the deal. False chord screaming isn't about being open, loose, and floppy. It's about being closed. You see, when you're open, you're like a tire with a big, huge hole in it. You're gonna run out of air. And most people think that if they push harder or use their stomach and diaphragm, that will fix the problem. But that will really just make you run out of air quicker. So, what do you think needs to be done? Well, if we have a tire with a big hole in it that's leaking air, we need to patch that hole up. Similarly, when doing false chord screams, you gotta close your throat so you don't let air out. It's not a matter of force. Okay, so how do we practically do that? The throat. So one way, among others, of doing this is to first make this buzzing noise. This one. These are your false chord tissues. After that, try actually closing your mouth and clearing your throat using these tissues in a nasal way and try and force the vibrations up into the nose. And once you could do that and get the vibrations in a really concentrated place, you'll start to hear that the tone becomes crunchy as opposed to buzzery. Buzzery. Crunchy. By making the distortion nasal, you're compressing properly. As a result, you'll get a better tone and won't run out of breath as easily. Now, this method worked for one of my students, Cooper, but it didn't work for my other student. For Jason, we first had to train his compression muscles to be able to close tighter. And after that, we tried a bunch of other approaches until we found another method that clicked for him better. And this is normal. Everyone's voice is different and different things click with different people. Now, if you're like my student Jason, you can try out some other approaches for this step by clicking the link in the description. I'll go more in depth about the anatomy and give you several ways to do some of these main different screams. It's free, have fun. Okay, so now here's where things get super interesting. And this is the part that I wish someone had told me. Now, if you just get your false chords flapping, it will sound cool and kind of low, but it won't sound as full and as distorted as you might want. For example, here's how it sounds with just pure false chord distortion. Now, if you take that and compress even more, you can compress your vocal cords together behind your false chords and get them to sputter to create fry distortion, which will add an extra layer of distortion to your screams. So for example, here's just false chords uncompressed. Now here's me compressing more until I add fry distortion to it. Now, once again, this is easier said than done, and this is when having a good coach can help, but you need to generally think about tightening up. Tighten up your throat, tighten up your nasal area, tighten up everything. Now, here's a nuance. Being tight and getting this fry distortion necessarily isn't always better, because if you tighten up too much, it also won't sound quite as low. So it's a balancing act between how much distortion you want versus how low you'd like to get. Here's me being very compressed, but not as low as this. Okay, so now that we have that part, now we could start to turn these into Alex Terrible lows. So there's a couple components. First, we want to start to begin to lower the tone by learning how to lower your larynx, meaning this guy. If you have a male voice, it might look more pronounced and you can visually see it going down, and we call this your Adam's apple. Now, there's many ways to lower this, but one way that works for some students is to curl your tongue upwards. Ow. Ah. Now, it's not necessarily the curling of the tongue that we want, but it's the lowering of the larynx that generally comes with the curling of the tongue. That's what we want. And if you do that while maintaining the compressed false chord tone from the first step, you'll sound like this. See how that's starting to sound a little bit lower? Now, once you get the hang of lowering your larynx, you can uncurl your tongue and start doing other things with it. This step may take some time to internalize before it's consistent enough to move on to the next step. If you move on too quickly to the next step, it's very easy to forget doing this step, and as a result, you won't sound as low as you ultimately want. So that's why it's really important to lower that larynx, or at least get in the habit of doing it. And for context, I was the world's slowest learner, and going from this to this took me about 6 months. No joke to do. This is because you have to juggle both keeping the vibrations up here while also lowering your larynx as low as it can get, which seems pretty contradictory, but trust me, it can be done. Okay, the next step to doing Alex's technique is we want to make it sound angry by adding voice to it. So without voice, this type of style of vocal tends to sound a little sterile. But if you add a little bit of yell, it flavors the scream to have a little bit more toughness to it, and it gives it a little bit more attitude. And you'll take it from this to this. I sound very sterile. I sound angry. And Alex sometimes even goes in and removes the distortion sometimes and leaves just his voice to get this interesting effect where he sounds like this. Maybe I am turning on and off my scream. Now, there's a couple of important nuances to adding your voice to your scream. First, as a reminder, make sure that you can do the distortion parts properly first. Because if you try and skip ahead and you try and yell to fix any problems with your screams, like a lack of distortion, that's when you can run into some vocal safety concerns. So in other words, never try to yell to fix the scream. First, learn how to create the distortion and then add the yell as a way to flavor it. Second, every person has a different vocal range, so the note that may be easy for you to get that yelling effect may be different than the note that Alex or I am using. So figure out the most natural part of your range. So for example, if I try and add my yell note up here, it doesn't really have the same effect. Or if I go too low, it's a little too low, but around here is the best for me. And that note might be different for you. So figure out the most natural part of your range that you can add voice from. Okay, so at this point, you've got the correct bass distortion, you've started to lower the tone, and you've started to add voice to it to give it emotion. This next step is the funnest part. It's the part that finally gives it that beastly sound and makes it go from this to this. So to do this next step, you want to arch your tongue forward like this. Now, some tutorials may have given you this advice before, but for a lot of my students, it helps if they do it specifically like this image. And for me, it feels like I get the best sound when the middle of my tongue is right behind my front two teeth. Now, this is something that may not click right away, and there are different techniques you can use to get into this type of sound, but today I want to emphasize more about the mental state you have to be in. So even if you can't get the perfect tongue shape right away, I promise you that it's possible. I used to try this tongue shape and it didn't work for me. And at the time, I just didn't try it long enough and I didn't believe I could do it. I felt like it was so hard for me to juggle the earlier steps that this should have been the easy part, but I underestimated it. And when it didn't work, I told myself that it just didn't work for me. But after I made the decision to just stick with it and commit to it for even just 30 minutes, I was already starting to be able to see some improvements. I experimented with different mouth positions, bigger mouth, smaller mouth, different vowels, tongue shapes. So I really want you to be perseverant at this stage. And when you do all of that, you should be able to sound like this. As a reminder, although you can do the same technique that Alex does, everyone's voice is different. So you might not sound exactly like him, but close enough. Okay, now let's talk about the next interesting technique that Alex does. So in order to do this, we first need to use the false chord low larynx voicey scream as a bass. Remember this? But now, instead of bridging our tongue forward like this, we need to get our tongue to do what's called a tongue roll. Now, if you struggle to do that, then what you need to do is put your tongue to the top of the roof of your mouth and have the tip behind your front two teeth. From there, you want to hiss like a snake. And from there, you want to loosen your tongue and say ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. So here's me putting it all together. And you want to combine that tongue movement with the voicey false chords with a low larynx. Combined with equals. And by the way, as a reminder, if you need help with any of this, check out the free screaming training that goes more in depth into different screams, and you'll get some different approaches how to do them. So just click the link in the description. Alex is not just an amazing vocalist technically, but his story makes him even more remarkable. He's from Russia, he knows very little English, and yet he still managed to succeed in an American-dominated genre. So I want to flip the focus to you. I want you to take influence using these techniques we've gone over in this video, but with your own unique story. Just like how Alex is unique, I can't wait to hear what you can uniquely bring to the music scene. Now you know more about his screams, check out this video to learn about another type of scream called a fry scream. This type of scream will allow you to hold out longer screams, get more distortion, go higher, and also allow you to add pitch to the scream